Now that we have created the ground plan, which we have here, and elevations for this set, we're going to do the last element, which is the centerline section. So in order to do that, you'll need two files. You'll need your project 7 file, and you'll need the rep section version 2020, I think is what the file is called, but this is a 2D drawing of the centerline section of the Orlando Repertory Theater, which is this theater. So the centerline section, it takes a cut through the center line of the theater, removes one side, and looks at the other side. So if we look at this in right isometric, we'll see that if we cut down the center line and removed this part of the set, we would see this wall, this wall, this wall, although we can't actually see it. This wall, we'd be cutting through this wall, and then we would see the steps. So since we don't actually have the steps in 3D, we could cut the centerline section and get the parts that we have in 3D and use those, and then draw the steps in 2D like we did here in the elevation. But instead of doing that, we're gonna do this. We're actually going to extrude these steps and turn them into 3D. So I'm going to go to the ground plan for a minute and see so these are 8-inch steps, so 8, 16, 24. So back to the scenery layer. So what I'm going to do is select this step and go to Model, Extrude, and I'm going to extrude that 8 inches. So there is our 2D step number 3D step number 1. Then I'm going to select the next step, Model, Extrude. I'm going to do this one 16 inches. And then this one will be 24. And I can actually just do +8 here, and it will do that for me. For the purposes of our drawing, those are the only 3 that you need. But if you want to go ahead and finish it out, you can just keep adding 8 to each extrusion. Etc. I'm not gonna keep going, but you're certainly welcome to do that. Next semester, we'll get into building all of the actual parts out of 3D. So our only purpose for making these 3D right now is so that we can use them to draw the section. I also want to make these windows match these windows. If you remember, the way we did this project was when we copied this wall over and then we adjusted the windows to work right with the elevation. And fortunately, there's a relatively easy way to do this. I'm going to use the eyedropper tool, and I'm going to put it in plug-in parameters mode. You can do active settings, all attributes, or plug-in parameters mode. What the eyedropper will do for you is it will pick up either the attributes or the other elements of one object and transfer them to another object. So if you're looking for line weight or color or any of those things, you can do all attributes. If you're working with plug-in symbols, then you want to tell it you want to copy the plug-in parameters. So I'm going to put it on the eyedropper mode, which picks up the parameters. So I'm going to click here on this window with the eyedropper and pick up those parameters, and then I'm going to put it in the bucket because I want to pour those parameters into this window and that window. So that's how we can very quickly get these windows to match these windows. So now we should have one more thing. So the backdrop, which is currently just a line, should of course be a taller plane, essentially, if it's a piece of fabric. So this is a group, I believe. Yes, I'm going to double click to edit the group, and I'm going to go ahead and extrude this line 20 feet. So it's a 20-foot tall backdrop. So there is our backdrop. So now we have the 3D elements of the set. We don't have the 3D elements of the theater, but we're going to find a way to compensate for that. We have the 3D elements of the set, which will allow us to draw the centerline section. So before we do that, we're going to go over to sheet layers and create a new sheet layer. Actually, instead of doing that, I'm just going to duplicate. That way it will have the title block already. I'm going to duplicate the elevation sheet. I'm going to edit it and change it to number 2 and centerline section. And then I can delete all of the things that are on there now. I'm going to change this. So this is going to be number 2. Instead of elevations, this is going to be centerline section. Exit. And this is actually project 9, is that right? Okay. Then I'm going to move the stacking order here. I'm going to move it up so that number 2 is actually number 2. So this is the standard stacking order for a set of plans. The ground plan is the first page. The centerline section is the second page. Then elevations follow. Often there are multiple pages of elevations interspersed with details and then other things. But always the ground plan is 1 and the centerline section is 2. And if we go back to the centerline section, if we go back to the elevations, you'll see that they're still there. When I duplicated it and erased them, it did not get rid of them. So now that I have a sheet layer to put it on, I'm going to go back to the scenery layer and back to top plan. And drawing the section is actually quite easy when you have 3D elements to work with. Just to let you know, if you were to want to do this all in 2D, what you would do is establish a baseline, and then draw sideways here. So that this is this wall. This is the edge of the window. So don't do this. I'm just showing you how to do this. This is the other edge of the window. We would measure and establish the bottom and the top of the window. We would have the top of the wall. So you would basically redraw the elevations sideways based on viewing them from the center line. And so in this case, some of them are not going to be straight on anymore. For instance, this wall is going to be unlike the elevation where we're looking at it straight on. In the section, we're looking at it at an angle. So that's why you can't just copy the elevations and put them into the section. And this is the way we've traditionally done this project. However, since we've moved into 3D this semester with these projects, we're gonna not do that. We're gonna do this a much easier way. We're going to go to View, Create Section Viewport, and then on the center line, we're going to click at the bottom of the center line. We're going to click at the top of the center line, and then you'll notice that an arrow appears. And depending on which way you drag your mouse, that's the direction of the arrow. We want to go towards stage right. So click at the bottom, click at the top, drag to your left in order to make the arrow point to stage right, and then double click. And you should get this dialog box. And we want to tell it that we want to be on the centerline section sheet. And everything else should stay the same, I think. If we click OK, it'll think for a minute. And then here is the the section. And you'll notice that you can see that these walls are, you can tell that this wall is angled because this is, you can see a little bit of the side of the windows. So this is what the section of the set looks like. We're cutting through this wall, we're cutting through the platform, and we're cutting through the backdrop. If you want to crosshatch the section the way we did with the elevations, you do that this way. You go to classes and find the newly created section style class. When the first time you create a centerline section, it will automatically generate a section style class. Then I'm going to, oh, my mouse has just died. Let's try that again. We're going to edit that, and what I want is the fill to be a hatch. I'm going to use my theater hatch, and then I can leave the other things the same. Sometimes people set this so that the color of the section is different. The default in Vectorworks actually is red. Yours may have defaulted to red. It's fine to leave it as red. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and make it red so mine looks more like yours. So red, pen, and hatched fill. If you click OK, you'll notice we get the indication that we need to update our section, our viewport. And if we do that, then this is what we get. So this is looking at the set from the center line towards stage right. The thing that's missing is the theater, because we have not modeled this in a 3D theater. This isn't super uncommon. So what we're going to do is, in the section drawing, we're just going to paste in the 2D version of the theater section. So that's why you need this file, which is the 2D version of the rep for theater. This is the proscenium. Actually, let's copy this and look at it on the other drawing. So edit, copy. We're going to go back here and go to scenery. This is not what you need to do to create the drawing. I just want to show you something. So I'm going to paste this in. Again, I'm going to keep this one. Yes. And so if we turn this way and line it up so that the plaster line is here. This is the back of the proscenium, so that's where the plaster line goes. So this is what the section of the theater looks like. You'll see that here's the proscenium, and there's the proscenium. Here are these doors. This door here is here. There's a section through the back wall. So this is in fact what the section of the theater looks like. So we're going to use this. We're going to paste it into our centerline section. So we're going to go back to the centerline section drawing. And if I paste this in now, it will be huge because it will be, in 1-to-1 scale. Some of you have had this problem with dimensions and things when you do them in the viewport. So we don't want to do that. What we want to do is actually paste this into the annotations of this viewport. So we're going to go into the annotation, and now we're going to paste it in. Yes, please. And we need to line this up. If you remember from the drawing the ground plan, this edge of the wall is 3 feet upstage from the plaster line. So I'm going to place the plaster line right here like that, so that the set is sitting on the floor at the plaster line, and then I'm just going to move the set. I'm going to move the theater to the left 3 feet. All right, so that is the set sitting in the theater. The one thing I need to fix here is because my set is not solidly filled, I can either erase these two lines that are actually part of the theater, not part of the set, but they look like they're going through the set, or I can make the set drawing opaque. So the first thing I'm going to do is send this to the back. Send to back so that I can get to this. So I'm going to draw a rectangle here. And hopefully send backward. Actually, I'm going to send to back and then send forward. Send forward, which puts it in front of the drawing of the theater but behind the drawing of the set, so it effectively blocks out the parts of the theater that I shouldn't be seeing through the set. While I'm here, I'm going to either adjust this and use it, or I can just delete it. I'm going to go ahead and use it, but feel free to delete it. So I'm going to center line section. I put that text in over here in object info, and then close there, and you'll see I need to do some adjustment. I'll need to move this around a little bit to make it fit, and it's not going to fit on the page. This is not unusual that the section of the theater doesn't fit on the page. So what we're going to do is just crop it so that we're getting rid of the part over here that is the lighting booth and the top of the audience seating. We don't really necessarily need that information. The information we need is what the set looks like sitting on the stage. And just, you'll study this in other classes, but just so you know what this is for, this isn't really a construction drawing like the elevations of the ground plan are. People rarely build anything from the section. What the section is so that you can communicate with the other designers. The lighting designer is going to want to see a section of the set so they can determine how the lights interact with the scenery. This section helps you determine if you have, for instance, flown objects. Like here's a good example. Here's our backdrop, and you'll see that if you're sitting here in the front seat, and this is the front seat, and you look up, you can see the top of the backdrop, which you probably don't want to do, but that's why we have this border that's here, that just happens to be left over, that's in the section of the theater. That's a common place where a border is there, so that just happened to be stuck in the drawing. But what that does is that keeps us, if we look under the border, that keeps us from seeing the back of the backdrop, which is a good thing. We can, however, see the top of this pipe, so what we might want to do is come in and drop in another border here somewhere. So this is what this section is good for, is letting you look at things from a vertical perspective rather than the horizontal perspective that you get from the plan. So I digress. Back to making this fit on the page. I'm going to double click here. I'm going to go into crop, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle around the part that I want to keep. We'll just go right through. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to line up right there. And X, why did that not work? Exit viewport crop. Right. Sorry, it took me a minute. That's because these are annotations, and they you can have annotations that extend outside of the crop. I'm glad I did that. We have not talked about that before. So if you have notes or dimensions or things that in a viewport, even if you have it cropped, if the annotations go outside the crop, they will in fact show up. So because this whole theater is an annotation, then it's going to show up outside the crop. So that I could either edit the annotations, go into this group and start deleting things to make it fit, but I kind of don't want to do that because I might want to use it all later. So instead I'm going to use sort of the same strategy I used to make this solid. I'm just going to use a white box to white out the part of it that I don't need. So I'm going to draw a rectangle over the part that I don't want. I'm going to set the outline of the rectangle to none or white, and then I'm going to send the sheet border to the front. Send to front. So that's how I can make that fit on the page. And then I'm going to go ahead and update this. So that's what my section should look like. So you should do two sections. You should do a section of the theater with the set in it, and then on a separate page you should do a section of your space. Your space will not have the annotation because that would be the space that the room is in. So it would either be the house or the apartment building or whatever that your room is in. I don't expect that any of you have drawings of the rest of the building that outside of your room, so we're gonna ignore that. So you're just basically gonna have this part of your space, and you can go in either direction. You can go left or right. Just establish a center line and go either left or right of it to draw your section. So just to reiterate, what you should turn in for this project is a PDF of this page, the section drawn through the set with the theater annotations, paste it in, and then open up your project 8, I guess, and create a section of the space on its own page for that project, and then save that. So you're going to be turning in 2 sections for this project.